So today I wanted to talk a little bit about really what's been going on in the news lately. I know we've kind of been talking about this, but it's important for us to keep our voices speaking out, I think, in this climate. Because there's been a lot of inflammatory comments by some of the politicians who are running for president. And because of that, I've had to certainly work with my mind to stay balanced and to not fall into anger at some of their inflammatory comments, because they're kind of over the top, some of them, I will say. And I think most of this rhetoric that's coming out from some of these politicians, the basis of it is fear. And of course, that plays right into the hands of ISIL. I read a quote or a piece from somebody, a historian, that said when the United States first invaded Iraq, one of the most enthusiastic proponents of the move was the man who founded the terrorist cell that would one day become the Islamic State, Abu Musab al-Zarwi. I think I probably slaughtered that name, but something like that. He excitedly called the Americans' 2003 intervention the Blessed Invasion. And so, of course, this makes recruitment much easier and increases their numbers. They are very much looking to have a ground war in Syria and in the Middle East, so that we can be continue to be seen as, the enemy. In this country, one of the people with the most divisive speech has been, in this last few days, Donald Trump, once again. And it was interesting, the New York Times did a piece on Donald Trump's language, and they analyzed every public remark that he made over the past week, from rallies and speeches, interviews, news conferences. The transcriptions yielded 95,000 words and several powerful patterns demonstrating how Mr. Trump has built one of the most surprising political movements in decades, and historians are saying, echoing the appeals of some demagogues of the past century, like Joseph McCarthy, George Wallace, Pat Buchanan. That was helpful for me to read that, actually. And so what is a demagogue? I looked that up to give the definition. It's a political person who gains power by appealing to people's emotions, instincts, prejudices in a way that is considered manipulative and dangerous. Yeah. And so that is what is happening. And the most striking characteristic of his speeches, when you read them, is that is this repetition of divisive phrases, harsh words, and violent imagery. And I think it's really important that we notice this and talk about it in terms of how we're not going to support this. This is not what this country is founded on. And we need to keep our voices strong about this, I think. Not in an angry way, but that we don't dismiss it. Because there are a lot of people that are listening to it and are supporting it. And so, we want to support the other side of this. And the way that he does this is that he has this particular habit of saying you and we as he speaks angrily against a dangerous them, So it's this separation, and in Buddhism we look a lot and talk a lot about how we try to see reality as it is, that we are all interconnected. And this kind of speaking is the exact opposite of that. It is creating a huge separation and then highlighting all of the differences that really aren't even there, making them up, actually. It was interesting, one scholar wrote that it would be particularly bizarre to have an immigration test based on religion, given that this country was founded by people who were freeing religious persecution. Isn't that interesting? I mean, when you think about it, it's just insane. So one of the ways that I work with my mind around this is to, calm myself down when I read these things, and then I put in my mind something that is that to me reflects reality more. And so President Obama this last Sunday gave a address to the nation. And I'll read just a few of his remarks, which was really such a beautiful speech. If you haven't read it, I would really encourage you to. He said, "Just as it is the responsibility of Muslims around the world to root out misguided ideas that lead to radicalization, it is the responsibility of all Americans of every faith to reject discrimination. It is our responsibility to reject religious tests on who we admit into this country. It is our responsibility to reject proposals that Muslim Americans should somehow be treated differently. Because when we travel down that road, we lose. That kind of divisiveness, that betrayal of our values, plays into the hands of groups like ISIL. Muslim Americans are our friends and our neighbors, our co-workers, our sports heroes, and yes, they are our men and women in uniform who are willing to die in defense of our country. We have to remember that." He goes on to say, "My fellow Americans, I am confident we will succeed in this mission because we are on the right side of history. We were founded upon a belief in human dignity, that no matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like, or what religion you practice, you are equal in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of God. Even in this political season, even as we properly debate what steps I and future presidents must take to keep our country safe, let's make sure we never forget what makes us exceptional. Let's not forget that freedom is more powerful than fear. Freedom is more powerful than fear. That we have always met challenges, whether war or economic depression, natural disasters, or terrorist attacks, by coming together around our common ideals as one nation, as one people. So as long as we stay true to that tradition, I have no doubt that America will prevail." So when I read this, it brings me back to a place of some calm and some compassion, brings me back in line with what makes me proud of this country and what I think in the hearts of people here, this is really, what people, the place people come from, actually, yeah. And so what are some of the things that because oftentimes, when you read this stuff, you feel kind of like, well, what can I do, one person, And so I just wrote down some things that I have been doing to work with this, to feel like I'm a part of it, that it's not, again, something separate out there. It has to do with me. So I wrote to President Obama and I thanked him for his skillful leadership. I actually got an email back, thanking me for supporting him, and this is why he continues to do what he does, because of people that support him. I wrote to my elected officials and told them how I want them to represent me. I do not fall to fear. I really don't listen to those politicians who incite fear and hatred for certain groups and religions. I keep generating compassion for those who are consumed by fear and are asking us to join them in separating ourselves from other living beings who are just like us. I remember this is just an example of ignorance, of viewing self as solid, inherently existent and unchanging. I also remind myself that this is samsara, and I put my energy into recommitting again to get out of this suffering mess, to become a Buddha so that I can actually be of benefit. And I remind myself that anger only creates anger. Compassion is the only thing that is going to turn this. And so I start with myself, and then I start with those in front of me and those that are distant from me, not in the same place as me. And so I invite everyone to do the same, to keep a balanced perspective on this, to remember and realize that your kind heart and your compassion is what is going to make the difference in those that are so misguided, that we all have quite a bit of power and leverage when we use our compassion in this way. And so then, once again, we start creating peace in this very chaotic world. So I invite you to enter into this practice.